It's Philosophy Talk.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture.
Television that plumbs the depths of mind-bending metaphysical mysteries.
We are controlling transmission.
Philosophy on the boob tube?
We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can change the focus to a soft blur or sharpen it to crystal clarity.
How can TV help us think deeply?
Join us as we think inside the box.
For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear.
A philosophical look at TV worth thinking about.
You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to
Philosophy Talk.
Coming up after the news.
The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
Welcome to Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. We're coming to you from the studios of KALW San Francisco.
We continue conversations that began on the Stanford campus at Philosopher's Corner. That's where the philosophy department is. Ken and I are both professors of philosophy there.
Today we'll be thinking inside the box.
What box do we have in mind? Television. We're looking at TV through the lens of philosophy.
You know, John, television is often described as a vast wasteland of mind-numbing entertainment. And there is some truth to that complaint. I mean, far too often, TV appeals to the lowest common denominator by promoting tasteless titillation and graphic gore.
But television can be an amazingly powerful medium, and sometimes it is. I mean, the magic of television can bring you the whole drama of human life right into your living room. You can witness history unfolding, and you can be transported to the furthest reaches of the imagination.
So in this episode of Philosophy Talk, we've decided to honor television at its best. We shine the Klieg lights on TV programs past and present that make us think.
Some of the shows we'll consider wrestle with gut-wrenching ethical dilemmas. Then there are shows that consider traditional philosophical topics like faith and reason or religion and science. And then there's those that deal with really deep issues about space and time and mind-bending metaphysical mysteries.
And we've invited a whole slew of thoughtful people to help us think inside the box, including a pair of television critics, a pair of past guests of our show, and a lineup of regular listeners.
Well, Ken, let's start by asking each other what we find valuable in television. Is there a program that's been stimulating your philosophical brain cells lately?
There are a couple, but one in particular is Fringe. I think it's in its fourth season. I started on this one late, and I love this program. It's so rich and so imaginative. It's got this science fiction element with parallel universes and all this strange quantum physics stuff going on, but it's also a deeply moral thing because there's a guy, Walter, and then his duplicate in the other universe, Walternate, with the same psychology, with both brilliant, both very sort of forceful people, and one is presented as utterly evil and sinister, and the other is presented as the guy who's out to save all this, but they're the same person with the same psychology. So I think it's really deep. It's really very deep. What's tickling your philosophical fancy?
Well, I've always had a weakness for mystery and detective shows. Back in the day, you had Dragnet, and, you had these two cops. They were perfectly straightforward individuals who did everything by the book. But now you have much more interesting characters who are flawed themselves and sometimes really cut corners, and you're faced with, well, were they justified in doing that to get the bad guy or to get around the official entanglement from above? My favorite right now is Luther. Luther is really deeply flawed, violent, moody, but quite brilliant. But he's worked himself into a situation where he's really dependent on a murderer, a woman that he tried to convict for murder that she was definitely guilty of, and she got a crush on him, and now she works in the background helping keep his life simple in ways that he doesn't know whether to appreciate or what. So it's really quite interesting, and I like it.
So look, I'll make a deal. I'll watch some Luther if you watch some Fringe.
I will definitely make a deal, and I might even follow through on it.
Now, John, bringing thoughtful television to life takes a whole array of people. It takes writers, producers, directors, but especially actors. Television drama would be nothing without great actors. So we sent our roving philosophical reporter, Caitlin Esch, to a school for budding TV stars to see what she could learn about that process. She files this report.
There's no business like show business, like no business I know.
You as an actor need to voluntarily get yourself in a vulnerable and meaningful place.
At the Actors Center in San Francisco, the crowd isn't exactly what you'd expect. There's a taxi driver, a handyman, a high school student. Each has dreams of performing and looks to television for inspiration.
One of my favorite characters is the main character on Hung, and she's so quirky, and she has absolutely no ego.
In Breaking Bad, I'm just blown away by the two main actors, the two meth cookers.
And especially Michael C. Hall in Dexter and in 6 Feet Under. He's incredible. He's just so truthful, and both characters he plays are so complex, but in totally different ways.
That's really where it's at. Like, you can't go into television, even if it's television, like lowly television. But that's what it's all about, is just like letting go of your ego and just letting the world see you as you are, as your goofy self.
Oz. That's the name on the street for the Oswald Maximum Security Penitentiary.
I sat there with Oz and I watched, I think, 5 or 6 episodes in one evening. It was like 6 hours straight. I could not turn it off.
Shelley Mitchell teaches beginning actors. She says TV has gotten really good, like the miniseries Angels in America, starring Al Pacino and Meryl Streep. The drama is based on a play by the same name, and it takes place back in the 80s, revolving around the lives of gay men living with AIDS.
When it was over, I felt I was shaking, and I felt like I had been to the theater.
To get to that level, Mitchell says she pushes her acting students to extremes, farther than one would ever go in a performance.
This exercise is called Private Moment, and you just go as far as you can, and it has its own catharsis about it.
A student sits on stage under the bright lights. His eyes are closed, he's breathing heavy, he's sweating a little. He does a quick exercise to loosen up. The idea is to act out an everyday routine, totally normally, like no one's watching. It's actually harder than it looks. The student takes a swig from a can and reaches for his harmonica. All this time, the rest of the class sits watching in the dark. It goes on for about 20 minutes. He drinks, he reads, he plays. Sometimes it's totally natural, and sometimes it looks like he's acting. Again, Shelley Mitchell.
For amateur actors, the feeling is, oh, the words are all there. It's written well. Oh, I can just protect myself. No, you need to be in a meaningful place for yourself and then give of yourself through the brilliant writing, hopefully, that you've been handed with the script.
Mitchell says she tries to teach her students what it is to let go of the ego and truly become a conduit for human emotion. And that's what makes good television. For Philosophy Talk, I'm Caitlin Esch.
Caitlin talked to some interesting actors, aspiring actors. It's clear that talented people are now aiming at TV as a reasonable career and not just something you get into if you don't make it in the movies. Of course, it always raises the question in my mind, why would anyone want to be an actor? But at any rate, I'm John Perry. With me is Ken Taylor. We're philosophy professors at Stanford, and we're on a mission to bring philosophy from Stanford to the radio. So this is Philosophy Talk, our show, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. Today, we're thinking inside the box, exploring television that makes us think. With us now is Walter Podrazik. He's a consulting curator at Chicago's Museum of Broadcast Communication, and he's co-author of Watching TV, 6 Decades of American Television. Walter, welcome to Philosophy Talk.
Well, hi, it's good to be here. Call me Wally. That's what all my friends do.
Okay, Wally, as someone who's spent a lifetime thinking inside the box, what's your go-to example of thought-provoking television?
Well, one of the shows that I consistently come back to, both for its the strength of its lead character and also the daring of its discussions, is the TV series House. This is Hugh Laurie, who plays the some would describe him as an irresponsible, crabby, pill-popping doctor who nonetheless, perhaps because of all that, pushes people to examine what they're doing and why they're doing it, because he's trying to basically solve a puzzle. But it is in the solving of the puzzle that he pushes every button possible. And often those buttons include people defending why they think a certain way and what's the basis for that thought. And it ventures into the very assumptions they bring to analyzing the facts. For instance, Dr. House brings a very basic assumption to his analysis of everything, which is everybody lies all the time.
You don't believe me?
Belief implies a level of giving a crap that I am never going to achieve.
One thing that about House that raises philosophical issues is risk. I mean, the only reason he isn't risking a lot of lives to show that his hypotheses are right is because he's always dealing with people who are going to die anyway because they haven't figured out anything else. But still, it's not clear to me that the series approaches the nature of risk and the morality of making decisions under uncertainty with complete clarity.
So are there any episodes in which House takes the risk? It works out badly for the patient, and it works out badly for him because, it's like a question of moral luck. If you take the risk and everything works out right, well, okay, fine, you're a hero. But if you take the risk, everything works out badly, then people start to question whether that was a risk worth taking. Does he ever get it put in his face? Was that really a risk worth taking? Were you rash as opposed to brave and wise and bold?
Well, here's a House quote. I brought a whole list of them with me. A quote from one of the episodes.
I take risks. Sometimes patients die. But not taking risks causes more patients to die. So I guess my biggest problem is I've been cursed with the ability to do the math.
But that suggests a basically utilitarian calculation, right? I take risks because the practice of taking risks in the long run helps more people than it hurts. I'm not sure I want somebody taking a risk with my life on that basis.
Right, but it sounds like in the basic moral universe of House, risk-taking is a mostly good thing.
Yes, that would be safe to say that risk-taking is a good thing.
It's as much about, as it were, the scientific method and how that is connected, not just to cold rational inquiry, but for a passion to get things right. So that passion and intellect kind of work together because these people care about the puzzle they're trying to solve. It's not just intellectual curiosity. These are puzzles of life and death intensity, and these people are devoted because they have a passion for their patients and for their endeavor. So I think there's some kind of message about reason and passion can be twin cousins, I mean, there is this thing in philosophy where you think the passions and reason are separate, but House seems to be making the point, no, reason and passion have to go together.
And maybe that's one of the reasons that I, as a viewer, come away from any episode feeling uplifted. When you look objectively at what happened, you say, well, yeah, the patient probably came through it, though some do die. It's like, I feel uplifted by watching what you just described take place. The intellect and the passion, the pursuit of truth, the pursuit of knowledge, the season opener. For the latest season of House, had him stuck in a jail cell, having put everybody aside, saying, you are wrong, you are wrong, you are wrong. Without anybody's authorization, I am going to administer this treatment, which will either kill the patient or demonstrate exactly what it is that's wrong with him, and you can treat him.
If it is masto,
It's not.
Well, then what do you have to lose by giving him the aspirin?
I'm not taking the risk.
It's his risk to take. If he has another attack and there isn't a doctor in the next cell, he could die. So for 1 second, will you stop covering your ass and do the test?
Well, he does that. They lock him up, extend his sentence, but the last scene is his dinner is slipped into his cell, and there's a small note saying, you were right.
Right.
And that brings such joy to his face. He was right.
Wally, I think you've convinced us or reminded us that House is a fascinating character. We've enjoyed having you on Philosophy Talk.
I've enjoyed thinking inside the box.
We've been talking with Walter Podrodzik. He's co-author of Watching TV, 6 Decades of American Television.
You're listening to Philosophy Talk. Today we're thinking inside the box. We're looking for deep thoughts on the small screen.
Coming up, Applied Ethics and Theories of Justice, from South Park to the Old West. when Philosophy Talk continues.
Support for Philosophy Talk comes in part from Reed College in Portland, Oregon.
Reed College, celebrating 100 years of enriching the intellectual and cultural lives of inquisitive people everywhere.
More at centennial.reed.edu. Welcome back to Philosophy Talk. What's on the radio this week? Television, that's what. We're thinking inside the box, searching for meaning in the vast wasteland of television. I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. And we know someone with surprising thoughts about a very popular television show. That's Richard Handley. He's professor of philosophy at the University of Delaware, and he's author of South Park and Philosophy, Bigger, Longer, and More Penetrating. Richard, welcome back to Philosophy Talk.
Good to be here again.
So, Richard, you're really hot on South Park. You've authored a book about it. You must think it's a philosophically rich show. Tell us a little bit about South Park and why it's so great.
Sure, I can pitch it to you. I think it's actually one of the most, if not the most, thoughtful show on television. First, I have to put in a little disclaimer, which is you have to be a little careful what your entry point into South Park is. Some episodes are pretty lame, and almost all episodes have something very offensive in them. So I can imagine somebody being easily turned off by it. Picking the right episodes and focusing on what they say independent of the wall-to-wall fart jokes, I think you can really bring some interesting stuff out of it. Particularly in the area of applied ethics, they really present issues in a way that other TV shows either don't even raise the issue or certainly don't go into the issue in the sort of depth that South Park does.
So, Richard, you set yourself up for a challenge here. Give me an episode of South Park that will get me past the lame jokes and the offensive stuff and get me to some hard, deep philosophical problems, ethical problems especially, that are dealt with in a depth that nowhere else on TV matches. I want to see you rise to that challenge, dude.
Oh, okay. Well, one of my favorites is the episode Best Friends Forever, which came out in the week subsequent to Terry Schiavo's feeding tube being removed. And it's just an obvious allegory of the whole Terry Schiavo thing, but about the issue of euthanasia in general.
So set it up. Set up the premise of this particular episode.
Okay. What happens is that, there's a perennial dying character, Kenny. In Best Friends Forever, Kenny has been practicing with the new Sony PSP and is getting really, really good at it. But distracted, he walks in front of an ice cream truck being driven by a guy distracted by his own PSP. Kenny is killed and goes up to heaven. And it turns out that this is all part of God's plan, because God wants Kenny in heaven to play the golden PSP against the forces of Satan, which are about to invade.
The Sony PSP was built by God to determine who on Earth had the best skills to defeat the armies of Satan. You are the best. You are the only hope for the universe.
Now, back on Earth, some interfering scientist manages to get Kenny's heart restarted after a few hours, but Kenny's brain is destroyed, so he's officially a tomato. And when Cartman finds out about Kenny not dying, he's really upset. The reason being, Kenny has left Cartman his PSP in his will.
I mean, this isn't about PSP, Cal. This is about my friend and his wishes. And Kenny said he didn't want to live like this. He did not. Did so. Did not.
Now, Cartman takes steps to get Kenny's feeding tube removed, including, going to the Supreme Court. So Stan and Kyle, the other friends, decide to fight Cartman over this, and they want Kenny's feeding tube kept in.
Dude, we have to do whatever we can to get that feeding tube put back in. Yeah.
No!
Let's go to the media. We'll make everyone in the country know that they're killing Kenny. Yeah, come on.
No, boys!
Now, one of my favorite parts of this show is that the forces of Satan use the Republican Party to try to get Kenny's feeding tube kept in, because they, of course, don't want Kenny to be able to play the golden PSP in heaven.
Who are we to decide that Kenny should live or die?
Who are we to decide that Kenny should live or die?
It is God's will that he live.
It is God's will that he live. Ha!
No, you don't say that part.
No, you don't say that part.
And so it's a really nice twist on the normal way that people think about this, because in fact God wants Kenny dead and the Conservatives are wanting to keep him alive against God's wishes.
But God wants Kenny dead to play the golden PSP? I mean, come on.
But what's beautiful about this is that, you know, people are always going around claiming to know what God wants, right? And God obviously wants the feeding tube in, right? And the angels are thinking, no, God wants him dead, right?
Yeah. So let me ask you a question, Richard. You say that South Park, in general, and this episode, Best Friends Forever, deals with a hard ethical issue in a way that no other television show comes close to. I mean, you claimed it was the most philosophically ambitious thing on TV. What's the takeaway here for a thoughtful, reflective person?
The takeaway, and I think this is generally true of South Park, is not any great positive thesis. They never get that far, and we know as philosophers that getting positive theses out of the end of things is actually difficult, takes a lot of hard work, and it's way too much to expect a television show to do something like that. What they manage to do, though, is to highlight a whole bunch of common popular answers that won't do. And so, for me, it's an exercise in taking out the trash. And that initial move of getting rid of positions that don't work clears the way for us to do some real philosophical work. So I don't claim they do a complete job, but I think they do a pretty good job of taking out the trash.
That's really amazing. So you think these guys are Socrates questioning the wise men of Athens and showing that there's nothing, there's far less there than we had imagined. So let's start over and really think this through.
Yes, indeed. I think they are about as Socratic as TV comes.
Well, I'm going to fix myself a nice Irish whiskey and see if I can get myself in the mood to watch some more South Park. You got any more deep shows that you want to tell us about?
Well, my first foray into philosophy and popular culture television was a book I wrote in 1997 on Star Trek. And I must say Star Trek still has a place in my heart. Star Trek dealt with a whole lot of different issues, especially metaphysical issues and moral issues.
Richard, there was lots and lots of Star Trek. I mean, there were lots of forms of Star Trek. There was the original Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, the other one.
Enterprise.
And then Enterprise. So,
yep.
I mean, there's a vast universe of possibilities. But is there one episode from the Star Trek universe you want to highlight briefly?
I guess my favorite part of philosophy is metaphysics, and I really appreciate some of the puzzles that they've raised about teletransport. I think you start to get these puzzles about teletransport in the original series, but then by the time Star Trek The Next Generation comes along, you get an actual teletransport fission episode where Lieutenant Riker, it turns out, had his information sent to two different replicators 7 or 8 years previously.
Who are you? Who are you? I'm Commander William Riker from the Federation Starship Enterprise. That's not possible. I'm Will Riker.
So there are the issues that philosophers have thought about concerning fission that come up in that episode.
That's when you take one thing and split it.
That's
right?
correct.
And there's two exact duplicates. What would happen if there was you and you again and there was an exact duplicate?
That's right.
If somebody were to want to get into Star Trek, what would you think would be their best entry point? Would it be the original? I mean, if a philosophically oriented person wanted to get into Star Trek.
Philosophically, I think you would go straight to Star Trek The Next Generation rather than go back to the original series. The original series has a lot of campy elements to it. And I would start from season 2 of Star Trek The Next Generation on.
Well, Richard, thanks for joining us to help us think with Inside the Box. You've suggested a couple of shows to us, one relatively new, that's South Park, one relatively old, that's Star Trek. So thanks for being on Philosophy Talk.
It was a real pleasure to talk to you again.
We've been talking with Richard Hanley, author of South Park and Philosophy. From Stanford University, this is Philosophy Talk. We're thinking inside the box about thought-provoking television.
Let's hear from one of our listeners, Michael in Richmond, California. Welcome to Philosophy Talk.
Hello.
So tell us, what TV show are you calling about that you want to bring to our philosophical attention?
Have Gun Will Travel.
Oh, Have Gun Will Travel, man. That's from 1957 or something like that, right?
Yeah, 1960, right around there.
I think I watched every episode back in those days. It came on, I think, right after Gunsmoke. Give us the basic premise of the show.
The main character is Paladin. That's the only name we know him by, and they play on that name quite a bit. He is a professional gun for hire. He seems to be well known. He always has a calling card that everybody sees at least once in the show. He's a bit of a superhuman character. He seems to know every language that he encounters: Indian, American, Asian, European, whatever. He knows everything. He quotes Shakespeare, the Bible, poets liberally.
Thrice armed is he that hath his quarrel just, and 4 times he that gets his fist in first. It's an old English proverb, John.
Okay, this is a cowboy show. Tell us why Have Gun Will Travel, a late 1950s, early 60s cowboy show, should command philosophical attention today. Tell us why.
First of all, it's fun. It's a powerful, well-written show, and the episodes are fun to watch. But for philosophy talk, the episodes explore all kinds of moral quandaries, ethical quandaries, the role of the law, race relations, what the Old West was really like or what we really think it was like. I think the episode The Man Who Lost shows the problem with this very, very well. In that episode, he captures a bad man, and in order to bring this man to what he considers to be the right place, to the court, to justice, he has to kill somebody who actually has a severe and deep grudge against this bad man.
Paladin, let him die for what he did to those people.
Coey gets his day in court. It's a thing I believe.
Enough to die for?
This is sometimes the most important thing about this character. He is driven by a sense of duty and right, but is his sense of duty and right really the right thing?
You know, I've often wondered if, in part, the character of Paladin was based on the real-life outlaw Black Bart. Black Bart, of course, wasn't a good guy. He held up Wells Fargo stages in what we now call the Gold Country, up in the foothills of the Sierras.
Right.
And once he was winged by somebody who was hunting, who saw him holding up the stage. And from that, the Wells Fargo, the Pinkerton people that Wells Fargo had hired, found a handkerchief, and they traced that back through a laundry mark to a launderer in San Francisco, and it turned out that it was a San Francisco playboy,
right?
Who was kind of moonlighting as a Wells Fargo hold-up man. So, you know, one step or two to Paladin, I think.
It might have been, although Paladin is pretty out front. If you watch the show a while, he's pretty out front about what he does for a living. People know. Mm-hmm. And they search him out in this hotel for the San Francisco hotel for a little interview before the action starts.
I don't think Black Bart had a little card that said Black Bart stages robbed.
Well, he did leave calling cards, I think.
So look, I think this is a great show, Have Gun Will Travel, and I think it's morally rich. You know, I don't know if we could get my 14-year-old son Kiyoshi, he's not in love with A, black and white, or B, cowboy shows. But I think if you could get young people to watch this is so morally rich. And it's very gripping, because John was right. It's very tightly scripted and well written. It's a great show, and I thank you for a great recommendation, Michael.
It made a huge impression on me as a 5-year-old, and I remembered it for 50 years until I rediscovered it. So it got possibilities for the younger.
A gun will travel, reap the card of a man. A night without armor in a savage land. Paladin, Paladin, where do you roam? Paladin, Paladin, far, far from home.
You're listening to Philosophy Talk. We're thinking inside the box, exploring philosophical television. And we've got a caller in the line, Emily from Tacoma, Washington, who wants to talk to us about Dexter. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, Emily.
Thanks for having me.
Emily, I got to tell you something. I got a real problem with this show. It's got a very morally problematic premise. Why don't you tell us about that premise?
Well, Dexter Morgan is a blood spatter analyst from Miami Metro Homicide,
Interestingly enough, his father was a police officer. His sister's a police officer, so he works closely with the law down there. The problematic part is he's also a sociopathic serial killer.
People think it's fun to pretend you're a monster. Me, I spend my life pretending I'm not. What made me the way I am left a hollow place inside. So I become an expert at blending in, camouflaging myself.
Did they know he was a psychopath when they hired him? Is that part of the job description?
No. Actually, no one knows that he is a sociopath with the exception of his father, who has since passed away. His sister, Deborah, doesn't even know. So the part of the premise is he is a sociopath. He is a serial killer, but no one else knows about it.
But he's not just a random serial killer, right? He's a serial killer for justice. Isn't that right?
Yeah. As a young boy, Harry, Dexter's father, realized that he had something mentally wrong with him. They tried to control these urges. They found out they couldn't. So what Harry did is Harry encouraged Dexter to follow a code.
It was really Harry who paved the road to my salvation.
Have you ever wanted to kill anything else? Like a person?
His lessons have never failed me.
One of the tenets of the code is to never kill innocent people. He can only kill murderers. So as part of the show, since he works for Miami Metro, he pulls out cases where all of the evidence pointed toward an individual murdering someone, for example, and yet this person was not convicted for some legal reason or some other paperwork reason. So this person is out and about and potentially being a menace to other people.
But still, Dexter is being what we call, judge, jury, and executioner. So there seem to be kind of two philosophical and moral issues that come up. One is kind of within the show. Is he really presented as being justified and sympathetic? But the other is just the whole question of putting on such a show. Doesn't this encourage people to think that they have the right to kill people they know to be guilty, even if the courts haven't? Is that a message we want the maturing youth of America to internalize?
That's a good question, and I would say that this show, at least from the people I've talked to who are fans of the show, still feel that there is something wrong with him. And even Dexter himself will admit in many different ways that I know there's something wrong with me, and I know that I'm not normal, and I know that this isn't the way things are supposed to go. But what I'm trying to do is take a really bad situation, how I'm made, and try and at least do something good with it.
Well, I don't know. I'm not at all convinced, Emily, because here's the thing. You can have your own private moral code, but here's a test. Can your moral code withstand the test of what Kant calls publicity? Can you declare this openly and say, here's the rule by which I live, and declare it to all the people you're living with? Can say, okay, I'm a serial killer. The justice system is imperfect. I'm going to take matters into my own hands. And moreover, and here's the complicated thing, since he's a psychopathic serial killer, he probably takes delight in the bare killing, independently of whether it's just or not. So ask yourself, could this moral code withstand any kind of test of publicity? Is this that kind of thing you could tell another person and say, yeah, I'm willing to defend my right to do that?
It was very hard for me to come to the idea that this was an individual very much like us, and I don't mean that we're serial killers, and I don't mean that we would advocate that, but this is a person who seems sincerely damaged, and he starts out with a list of hard and fast rules in the first episode, Harry's Code, and he adheres to those rules, and he doesn't change those up in any way. As the series progresses, and you get into season 2 and 3 and 4, we start seeing that those rules start to be tested, and Dexter has to respond to those kinds of things. Now, he hasn't stopped killing entirely, but as we go along, it seems like the ideas that held him and said, this is okay as long as I follow the rules, those sorts of things are starting to come undone.
Well, I think all of this isn't going to make Ken more fond of the show. The fact that an intelligent person like yourself with these philosophical ideas was resistant to the show, and now you're being drawn into it, and that after many serial killings, Dexter seems to have some hope of redemption. I just think Ken is not going to be enthusiastic about the show, but like you, I kind of enjoy it.
Thanks for thinking inside the box with us, Emily.
Thanks for having me.
You're listening to a special edition of Philosophy Talk. We're taking a philosophical lens to the world of television, thinking inside the box.
What does the new season of television have in store for us thinking people? And what's up with a show that names its characters after great philosophers?
We'll find out when Philosophy Talk continues.
Cable TV, we settled in for the night, my baby and me. We switched round and round till half past dawn. There was 57 channels and nothing on. 57 channels and nothing on.
We're compiling a thinking person's TV guide. I'm John Perry. This is Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. I'm Ken Taylor, and here to help us think inside the box is Joshua Landy. He's a professor of French and Italian at Stanford University. He's author of Philosophy as Fiction, and he's a huge fan of the TV program Lost. He even put on a whole conference about the philosophy of Lost. So, Josh, welcome back to Philosophy Talk.
Thank you very much.
Tell us why a philosophy-oriented person who likes television should watch Lost.
Well, this is one of those rare TV shows that actually wears its philosophy on its sleeve. I mean, it has characters called things like Rousseau, Locke, Hume, and even Jeremy Bentham. So there's no getting around philosophy on the TV show Lost. But it also raises a bunch of interesting, or it gets into a bunch of interesting philosophical questions like the question of innate goodness, community formation, personal identity, things like that.
So take me through one of these things you think to be the key issues about Lost and its narrative arc over time and how it's philosophically illuminating.
Okay, so I should just say I'm going to issue here a blanket spoiler alert. If people have not watched the show and they're going to watch it and then come back and listen to the rest of this episode. So one of the key questions that gets raised from very early on in the show is the Rousseauist question of whether human beings are born good and then become bad through their contact with a corrupting society, or whether, in fact, there's some grain of antisocial tendencies already within people when they're born. We see a number of very flawed human beings. And we're invited through a series of flashbacks to entertain the hypothesis that they just got that way by force of circumstance. Bad things happened to them, but maybe they weren't inherently bad. They weren't bad to begin with.
I realized that when I tied you up in here the other day, I made the mistake of failing to introduce myself. My name is John Locke, and I'm responsible for the well-being of this island. Eventually, Miles, you're going to tell me who you are, and you're going to tell me about the people on the boat, and you're going to tell me why you're so interested in Ben. In the meantime, however, you're going to keep your mouth shut.
So Rousseau, historically, was a pretty obnoxious guy. So that sounds accurate, but is there David Hume? Is he on there? He was a nice guy.
True, yeah, and in fact, the character's name is Hume, his first name is Desmond, is indeed one of the nicest characters on the show. So, as the thing unfolds, and here's where I'm, again, spoiler alert, I'm going to jump all the way to the end of the show, the 6th season, final season. We discover that the entire arc of this show, everything that we've watched, has been essentially a bet-settling experiment between two supernatural forces. Jacob, who is more or less the force for good, and the Man in Black is more or less the force for bad. And the Man in Black believes that people are deeply corrupt.
You're trying to prove me wrong, aren't you?
You are wrong.
Am I? They come, fight, they destroy, they corrupt. It always ends the same.
It only ends once. Anything that happens before that, it's just progress.
Sounds like an update of the book of Job, because that starts off with God and Satan making a wager.
Absolutely. All of it has been part of this big plan to see who's right and who's wrong. Is Rousseau right or is Hobbes right?
This story takes the whole arc to develop.
Right, that's right.
The whole narrative arc of the whole thing. And I do admire that there are people who are creating television who think in multi-season arcs and think of a complicated story that they're going to tell.
Yes.
I mean, you can't do that with a movie. Right, but that's the amazing thing that you could do with television. But I don't think many producers have the courage to let that happen.
I agree, because how do you know how long the show's going to run? Is it going to be canceled? I mean, it's terrific boldness on their part. But let me just talk quickly about one fun theme that you could indeed see in any old episode of the show Lost, and that's the question of personal identity. Each episode tends to focus on a particular character and to try to explore who that person is, where they come from, how they became who they are, and things like that. And there seem to be, again, a number of different hypotheses in the air as to how we should think about personal identity. On the one hand, it seems as though maybe people can change radically over the course of their lives. So in the case of coming to the island, all these people seem to have a fresh start and to be able to leave their old selves behind. On the other hand, as you're going to see, Ken, as you get into the later seasons, parallel universes get created. And you have the same characters existing in more than one form in different possible worlds.
He told me that after I left the island, some very bad things happened. And he told me that it was my fault for leaving. And he said that I had to come back.
In this version, the underlying assumption seems to be that there's some kind of core of self that remains constant, even though many other things change. So the characters aren't quite who they were in the world that we've known them in, and yet there's something that remains constant.
So that's really interesting. I mean, because every individual episode of Lost has this character where some of the characters, who they are and what they are, is put to the test. What they really value is put to the test. This island is constantly testing them. And Locke says this at one point. This island is testing us. And it's true. It's always testing who they are, what they value, why do they value it. So I think that's like the essential Socratic question. Who are you and why?
Absolutely. It couldn't get more philosophical than that.
You think we crashed on this place by coincidence? Especially this place? We were brought here for a purpose, for a reason, all of us. Each one of us was brought here for a reason.
We've been talking with Joshua Landy, professor at Stanford and a big fan of the philosophically rich television show Lost. You're listening to Philosophy Talk, where we're thinking inside the box about thought-provoking television.
With us now is Joanne Ostro. She's a television critic for the Denver Post, and she's got some ideas about new television that's worth thinking about. Joanne, welcome to Philosophy Talk.
Thank you.
So, Joanne, as a TV critic for a major newspaper, you have to keep track not only of what's here right now, but what's on the horizon. Tell us what you think is the most promising new series.
I would say A Gifted Man on CBS is one that's interesting right now. It's showing the public struggling with some of these big ideas, science versus spirituality. It's all there. It's stuck in the TV death slot of Friday nights, but this is a drama about a brilliant and arrogant surgeon who is a man of science, very ordered and has no room for anything other than science in his thinking, and suddenly starts to have visitations from his deceased ex-lover.
You still don't believe I'm real.
I don't know what to believe.
I died and now I'm back.
So that's it. So now you're just gonna pop in whenever?
I can't control when and where I show up.
This doesn't make any sense.
He can see her, nobody else can, and she's going to teach him lessons from the hereafter and open him up. And, by the end of the pilot, he's gone to have CAT scans and try to figure out medically what's going on with him. Is he hallucinating or having seizures or what's going on? And by the end of the pilot, he's seeking out a shaman.
So this sounds like House plus metaphysics and heaven.
Yeah, it's a little more like Lost, struggling to find out what is real and what isn't. A lot of it is about how incredibly successful and wealthy he is, and should he be giving of himself in some other way.
So A Gifted Man, this sounds like a challenging, interesting program. And whenever I hear ambitious TV, I think, who's behind this? Who has the thoughtfulness and who can get this on the air? Who's behind this?
In this case, it's Academy Award winner Jonathan Demme, who did Silence of the Lambs and is pursuing television now.
So this is a show with some, let's call it existentialist heft behind it, right?
I hope so. It's still early, but let's hope it's got some heft to it. Another one is on cable on Showtime called Homeland.
Tell me about Homeland.
Homeland is dealing more with the war on terrorism and what is the meaning of being a hero and what is our paranoia versus our patriotism. A CIA officer may have been converted to the other side. And may have become an Al-Qaeda operative. And so we're not sure. It's a cat and mouse game.
What were his exact words, please?
An American prisoner of war has been turned.
He said this in English.
Yes, he whispered it into my ear right before the guards pulled me away.
I want to use the expression turned.
He meant turned, working for Abu Nazir.
You know, this has a lot to do with what is patriotism, who are the good guys, what goes on inside the human mind that someone could be taken over, brainwashing. Then it's a lot about paranoia, you know, who's the good guy?
I want to take you back just really briefly to A Gifted Man. You said it's on the Friday night death hour. Is that what you called it?
Well, in television, Friday night is sort of the death time slot.
But you know what? One of the most philosophically ambitious programs currently on Friday night. That's Fringe. Are you a fan of Fringe at all?
I am a fan of Fringe. They are taking today's headlines and everything that you see on a Nova Science special bubbles up on Fringe. Parallel universes and black holes. And what was it the other day about Einstein's theory no longer holds? I saw that.
Right.
That, you know, imagine that as an episode of Fringe.
Now let me ask you a question. Do you think CBS is trying to pitch this as a competitor to Fringe? Is that why they chose that Friday night slot? Not because they want to consign it to death, but because they want to... Hey, you got your philosophical TV, and I've got my philosophical TV, which is good for us philosophy TV lovers.
They want to get the 9 million nerds that don't have anything better to do on Friday night than watch TV.
That's exactly it. I think this could not compete on CBS on another night, but on Friday they'll settle for 9 million and call it good.
Now, Joanne, you are the TV critic for the Denver Post, an important newspaper there in Denver and throughout the nation. So let me ask you kind of jack up the question a level. Is there hope for philosophical TV? I mean, given the demographics of the philosophically interested, which are probably fairly small, and the large amount of money it takes to produce TV shows, are we going to see very many philosophically challenging and intriguing television shows?
I absolutely believe it. I think that people are asking for more from television, and cable has proven to the networks, the struggling commercial broadcast networks, that controversy is good business and sometimes even thinking is good business. So they're competing now, and they're coming up with some tougher, more thoughtful, provocative dramas, and I hope it's going to work for them.
So philosophical TV may never be American Idol.
Right.
But if there can be more programs like A Gifted Man, or like one of my ones I'm getting into belatedly, Lost, or even Buffy the Vampire Slayer, if there can be more
some
of
great
those,
shows.
and that's good for thinking people, right? So there's a future. Thinking people can take some hope in the future of television.
Absolutely. Listen, this, for better or worse, television is our most powerful medium, and all the anxieties that bubble up in the culture eventually end up on television. And right now people are anxious about all kinds of things that are philosophically interesting. And whether it's, you know, why is the weather out of our control, or why is the economy out of our control, or why are strange things happening, this all becomes grist for television.
So, Joanne, this has been a wonderful conversation and a hopeful conversation, because you've helped us all believe that there's a future for philosophical TV.
Good. I hope that's true. I really do. Otherwise, you'll stay home Friday nights and watch Kitchen Nightmares.
You can find a list of all of the TV shows discussed on the air today at our website, philosophytalk.org. And we invite you to continue this conversation on our blog, theblog.philosophytalk.org, where our motto is Cogito ergo blogo. I think, therefore I blog. You can also follow us on Twitter and find out more by visiting our very active Facebook page.
And you can sign up to get the free weekly podcast of Philosophy Talk at our website, philosophytalk.org. We asked the fast-talking Ian Scholes, the 60-second philosopher, to look for wisdom inside of his boob tube.
Ian Scholes. I was 6 when we got our first TV. We only had one station. TV was all about Gene Autry movies and Popeye cartoons and farm reports. We'd visit relatives in another state twice a year, which thrilled me because they had 3 stations. More westerns and comedians, and Perry Mason. He defended sun-dappled adulterers accused of murder and ate out every night. We ate out about once a year. Sun-dappled adulterers, Daddy. Why don't we live there? Most early variety shows featured radio stars or vaudevillians. As the medium developed, vaudevillians were a bit too big for the room, were edged out by crooners with very white teeth and shiny clothes. There were 12,000 of these, and they all had their own shows and made guest appearances in each other's shows until sponsors got tired of them. Then they made a living in Vegas for a while until Vegas got tired of them, and then they all moved to Branson, Missouri, where they each had their own theater, and your grandparents traveled to see them at Christmas. We moved, when I started high school, to a place with 3 networks plus 2 UHF stations, which only aired wrestling and Japanese monster movies. Westerns went away in favor of Quinn Martin Productions, which were all about cops and private eyes. There was generally a gimmick. Cannon was a fat private eye. Barnaby Jones was an old private eye. We got a color TV. We got remote control. But suddenly, television became the boob tube. It was the vast wasteland. I took it to heart and pretty much stopped watching television for the next 10 years or so, around the time Laugh-In started. The jokes were terrible, but there were a lot of them. Then Saturday Night Live shook things up. It was a variety show without crooners, with unknowns, actively turning its back on Hollywood TV royalty and favoring hip bands and hip hosts. Where was John Davidson? Where was Paul Lynde? If it hadn't been for Love Boat, Fantasy Island, and Hollywood Squares, old Hollywood wouldn't have had any work at all. Ironically, the SNL folks all went on to careers in movies and are now themselves old Hollywood, who would never be asked to host the next incarnation of SNL, if there ever is one. We got cable and VCRs. Television became more than television. It was movies. It was porn. It was pay-per-view, DVD players, TiVo, high def. We got satellite. We got movies on demand. We got TV screens bigger than the living room wall. TV today is both dumber and smarter than it ever was. We have Bridezillas and boring Ken Burns documentaries. We have Jersey Shore and the shockingly grim Breaking Bad. And we have the internet. Old TV shows, new TV shows, everything you want. You can watch it on your cell phone. Why would you want to watch TV on your cell phone? We can do YouTube mashups of our favorite shows. And now there's the iPad. We can swirl images around with our fingers like a toddler with finger paint. But where are the sun-dappled adulterers? Do they still eat out every night? You can keep the iPad. Just point me to the sophisticated hot babes and dinner. Believe me, Daddy, I still want to live there. I gotta go.
Philosophy Talk is a presentation of Ben Manila Productions and the trustees of Leland Stanford Junior University. Copyright 2011.
Our executive producer is David Demarest.
Our production coordinator is Devin Strolovich. Laura McGuire is our director of research.
Thanks also to Chris Hoff, Merle Kessler, Dave Millar, Corey Goldman, and Mark Stone.
Support for Philosophy Talk comes from the Templeton Foundation and from various groups at Stanford University and from the Friends of Philosophy Talk
and the members of KALW San Francisco, where our program originates.
The views expressed or misexpressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of Stanford University or of our other funders.
The conversation continues on our website, philosophytalk.org.
I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. Thank you for listening.
And thank you for thinking.